Hi, everybody. You're reading with Jimmy. This is Jimmy. And today we're going to read Nikolai Gogol's The Diary of a Madman, translated by Andrew R. McAndrew. The Diary of a Madman by Nikolai Gogol, October 3rd. An extraordinary thing happened today. I got up rather late, and when Marva brought my boots, I asked her the time. Hearing that 10 had struck a while before, I dressed in a hurry, and I must say I'd soon have skipped the office altogether, knowing the sour look the chief of my division would give me. For a long time now, he's been telling me, "How come, my man, you're always in such a muddle? Sometimes you dart around like a house on fire, and you get your work in such a tangle the devil himself couldn't put it straight. You're likely to start a new heading with a small letter, and you give no date or reference number." The vicious old crane. He must envy me for sitting in the director's room and sharpening his quills. So I wouldn't have gone to the office if not in the hopes of seeing the cashier and trying to get a small advance on my salary out of the Jew. What a creature he is. The last judgment will come before you'll get a month's pay out of him in advance. And even if there's a dire emergency, you can beg until something bursts inside of you. He won't give in, the hoary monster. Yet at home, and his own cook slaps him around. Everyone knows that. I see no advantage in working in our department. There's no side benefits whatsoever. It's not like working, say, for the city administration or in the Justice Department. There, you may see someone nesting in a corner, scribbling away. He may be wearing a shabby coat and have a snout that you'd want to spit at, but then just look at the summer house that he rents. And don't ever think of offering him a gilt china cup. This, he would say, might be all right for a doctor, but he must have a pair of horses maybe, or a carriage, or a beaver fur. 300 rubles worth or so. And he looks so quiet, and he sounds so deferential and polite. "Would you," he'll say, "be so kind as to lend me your penknife to sharpen my quill, if you please?" But then he'll strip a petitioner naked, except perhaps for his shirt. On the other hand, though, to work in our department carries more prestige. The people of the city administration have never dreamt of such cleanliness. Then we have these red mahogany tables, and our superiors always address us politely. Yes, if it weren't for the prestige, I confess I would have left this department long ago. So I put on my old overcoat, and it was pouring rain, took my umbrella. The streets were quite deserted except for some peasant women, their skirts thrown over their heads, and a few merchants under umbrellas and a coachman here and there. As for decent people, there was only our kind, the civil service clerk, squelching along. I saw him at the street corner, and as soon as I saw him, I said to myself, "You're not on your way to the office, my man. You're after that one trotting ahead over there, and it's her legs you're staring at. What a rogue your civil servant is. When it comes to such matters, he can take on an army officer any day. He'll try to pick up anything under a bonnet." I was passing by a store thinking about this when a carriage stopped in front of it. I recognized it at once. It belonged to the director of our department himself, but I thought, he can't possibly need anything here. It must be his daughter. I pressed myself against the wall. The footman opened the carriage door, and she fluttered out like a little bird. Oh, how she looked, around first to the right, then to the left, and how her eyes and eyebrows flashed past me. Oh, God, I'm lost forever. And why did she have to drive out in the pouring rain? Try and deny after that women have a passion for clothing, huh? She didn't recognize me. Besides, I was trying to hide myself. My coat was quite stained, and it was out of fashion, too. Nowadays they are wearing long collars in their coats, while I had only two very short ones, one on the top of the other. Her lapdog was too slow to get into the store while the door was open and had to stay in the street. I know this little dog. She's called Madge. Then a minute or two so later, I heard a thin little voice. Hello, Madge. I'll be damned. Who's that talking? I turned around and I saw two ladies walking under their umbrellas. One was old, the other young and pretty. But they had already passed when I heard it again, just next to me. You ought to be ashamed, the Madge. What on earth was going on? I saw Madge and a dog that had been following the two ladies sniffing at one another. I said, maybe I'm drunk. Let me move that page. Maybe I'm drunk to myself, but it's not likely. It doesn't happen to me very often. No, Fidel, you're wrong. With my own eyes, I saw Madge forming the words. I was bow wow. I was bow wow wow. Very sick. Talk about a lapdog. I must say I was quite surprised to hear her talking, and later, however, when I had properly sized the situation, I was no longer surprised. As a matter of fact, the world has seen many similar occurrences before. You know, I've heard that in England, a fish broke the surface and uttered a couple of words in such an outlandish language that scholars have been trying to work out their meaning for 3 years, so far in vain. And then, too, I read in the newspapers about two cows who went into a store and they asked for a pound of tea. But I confess that I was much more bewildered when Madge said, I did write to you, Fidel. Perhaps Fido didn't give you my letter. Now, I'd be willing to forfeit a month's pay if I ever heard a dog that could write. Only gentlemen can write, correctly anyway. Of course, one finds some scribbling shopkeepers, even serfs, but that sort of writing is mostly mechanical. No commas, no periods, no spelling. So I was surprised. I'll confess, recently I've been seeing and hearing things that no one else has ever seen or heard. I said to myself, let's follow this little dog and find out who she is and what her thoughts are. So I opened my umbrella and I followed the ladies. We crossed P Street and there onto Tradesman Avenue. And then it turned into Carpenter's Lane and finally stopped before a large building near Cuckoo Bridge. I know this house, I said to myself. It's the Zerboff house. What a house. Who isn't to be found there? There's so many cooks, so many Poles. It teems with my fellow civil servants. They just sit there on top of one another like dogs. You know, I have a friend there who can play the trumpet quite well. The ladies went into the 5th floor. Fine, I thought to myself. I won't go in now, but I will make a note of the place and wait for the opportunity. October 4th. Today's Wednesday, and that's why I was in our director's office study at his home. I purposely came in early and I settled down and I sharpened all the quills. You know, our director must be a very brilliant man. His study is crammed with bookcases. I looked at some of the titles. Such erudition all over the place. It cuts an ordinary person off completely. And they're all in French or German. And just look into his face. Good gracious, what a lot of importance shines in his eyes. I've never heard him utter an unnecessary word, except perhaps when one hands him some documents. He may say and ask, how's the weather outside? It's quite damp, sir. Yeah, he's different from our kind. A public figure. Nevertheless, I feel that he has taken a special liking to me. If only his daughter. Oh, what a rogue I am. Never mind. Quiet. I was reading the Bee. Aren't the French stupid race? Whatever can they be driving at? I'd like to take them all and give them, each one of them, a good thrashing. In the same journal, I also read of a very nice description of a ball by a landowner from Kursk. Kursk landowners certainly write well. Whereupon I noticed that it was striking 12:30 and our director still had not left his bedroom. But then around 1:30, a thing happened no pen can adequately describe. The door opened, and I thought it was the director, and I jumped up from my desk holding the documents in my hand, but it was her in person. Holy Fathers, the way she was dressed. Her dress was white, all fluffy like a swan. And when she looked at me, I swear it was like the sun. She nodded to me, and she said, "Hasn't Papa been in here?" What a voice! A canary, an absolute canary. "Ma'am," I was on the point of saying, "don't have me put to death. But if you do decide that I must die, let it be by your own aristocratic little hand." But my tongue wouldn't obey me. And I only muttered, "No, ma'am." Her glance slid from me. Pardon me. Her glance slid from me. Where was I? I lost my place. I'm sorry. Her glance slid from me to the books, and she dropped her handkerchief. I rushed like mad, slipped on the blasted parquet, and almost smashed my nose. But somehow I recovered my balance and picked it up. Holy saints, what a hanky. Such fine, delicate linen. And amber, sheer amber. It exuded aristocracy. She said, "Thank you." And she smiled, but so faintly that her divine lips hardly moved, and then she left. I remained seated there, and then after another hour, a footman came in and he told me, "You may go home. The master has gone out." That flunky is the one thing I can't stand. They're always sprawled out in the entrance hall, not even bothering to acknowledge my existence with a little nod. Once, one of those lumps actually offered me snuff, and without even getting up. "Don't you know, you stupid flunky, that I'm a civil servant and that I come from a respectable family?" Still, I picked up my hat, pulled on my overcoat, unaided since these gents wouldn't think of helping you, and left. At home, I lay in my bed most of the time, and then I copied an excellent poem. "Without you, 1 hour crept slowly like a year. In my life, is my life worthwhile? I wept when you are not near." That sounds like Pushkin. In the evening, I put on my overcoat and walked over to the director's house, and I waited at the gate for quite a while to see if whether or not she would come out and get into her carriage, but she didn't. November 6th. Something's got into the chief of my division. When I arrived in the office, he called me, and he began as follows. "Now then, tell me, what's the matter with you?" What do you mean?" I said. "Nothing." "Come on, try to understand. Aren't you over 40? Time to be a bit wiser. What do you fancy you are? Don't imagine I can't see what you're up to. I know you're trailing after the director's daughter. Just look at yourself. What are you? You're nothing. You don't have a penny to your name. Just look in the mirror. How can you even think of such things?" The hell with him. Just because he's got a face like a druggist's bottle and that cliff of hair on his head all curled and pomped, and because he holds his head up in the air like that, he thinks he can get away with anything. I see through his indignation. He's envious. Perhaps he's noticed the marks of favor bestowed upon me. A lot I care what he says. So he's the divisional chief. So what? So he hangs out his gold watch chain and has a custom-made boots at 30 rubles. Let him be damned. Perhaps he's imagining that I'm a shopkeeper or a tailor for a father. I'm a gentleman, and I can be promoted too. I'm only 42, an age when one's career is just beginning. Wait, my friend. I'm going to go higher than you yet, and God willing, very, very much higher. And then I'll have social position beyond your dreams. Do you imagine that you're the only one to have dignity? You give me a fashionable new coat, let me wear a tie like yours, and you won't be worthy to shine my shoes. My lack of means, that's the only trouble. November 8th. Went to the theater. The play was about a Russian fool, Flalatka. I laughed a lot. They had a vaudeville show as well, and it was full of amusing verses lampooning lawyers, so outspoken that I wondered how it passed the censor. As to the merchants, it says plainly that they swindle people and that their sons wallow in debauchery, and they elbow their way into society. There was an amusing couplet which complained about the way newspaper men criticize everything and asked the audience for protection from them. You know, the playwrights write very amusing plays nowadays. I love going to the theater. And as soon as I can get hold of a few pennies, I can't help myself. I go. But civil servants, they're such swine. You won't catch clods like them going to the theater, not even if they're given free tickets. One actress really sang well. It made me think of, oh, what a rogue I am. Never mind. Silence. November 9th. Left for the office at 8. The divisional chief pretended he hadn't noticed me come in, and I also acted as though nothing had happened between us. And I went through the papers and sorted them out, left at 4, and on the way home I passed by the director's house, but I didn't see anyone. After dinner, mostly lay on my bed. Today, I sat in the director's study, and I sharpened 23 quills for him, and 4 quills for her. He likes to have as many quills to hand as possible. How brainy he must be. Usually he doesn't say much, but I guess he must be weighing everything in that head of his. I'd like to know what he has on his mind most of the time. What's he cooking up there? I'd like to have a closer look at these people and how they live with all their subtle innuendos and courtly jokes. I wish I knew how they behave and what they do among themselves. I've often tried to engage the director in conversation, but I'm damned if it's ever come off. I've managed to say, it's warm or cold outside, and that's about absolutely as far as I got. One day, I'd just like to step into their drawing room. The door is ajar sometimes, and from there I can see another door leading to another room. The drawing room. You should see how it's decorated. All those mirrors and fine pieces of porcelain. I'd also like to see the part where her rooms are. That's where I'd really like to go. I'd like to peep into her boudoir and see all those little jars and bottles of hers standing there amidst the sort of flowers that one doesn't even dare breathe on. To have a glimpse at the dress that she's thrown off, lying there looking more like air than a dress. It would be wonderful to glance into her bedroom. Miracles must happen there. It's a paradise surpassing the heavenly one. What wouldn't I give to see the little stool upon which her delicate foot descends when she gets out of bed, and watch how an incredibly fine, immaculate stocking is pulled up her leg. Oh, the roguish thoughts. Never mind. Silence. But today something suddenly became clear to me. When I recalled the conversation between the 2 dogs I overheard on Nevsky Avenue. Fine, I said to myself. Now I'll find out everything. I must get hold of the letters exchanged by those nasty mutts. I'm sure to find out something. Now, I'll confess that at one point I almost called Madgy and said to her, listen, Madgy, we're alone now. You tell, if you wish, I'll even lock the door so no one sees us. You tell me everything you know about your mistress, what's she like, and all that. And don't worry, I swear I will not repeat a thing to anyone. But the sly little mutt just sort of shrank into herself, put her tail between her legs, and she left the room in silence as though she hadn't heard a thing. For a long time, I've suspected dogs are much more intelligent than men. I was even certain that they could speak and simply chose not to out of a peculiar stubbornness. A dog is an extraordinary politician and notices everything, every step a human takes. Still, whatever happens tomorrow, I'm going to the Zerboff house and question Fidel. And if possible, I'm going to lay my hands on Madgy's letters to her. Pardon me. November 12th. At 2 p.m., I went out determined to find Fidel, to question her. I can't stand the smell of cabbage which comes pouring out of the greengrocers along Tradesman's Avenue. This and the infernal stench from upon the gates of every house set me scurrying, holding my nose. And all of the soot and smoke that they let pour out into the vile workshops make it's quite an unsuitable place for a person of breeding to take a stroll. So when I reached the 6th floor and I rang the bell, out came a girl with little freckles, and not too bad looking at that. I recognized her at once. She was the one that I had been seen walking with the old woman. She blushed a little, and I immediately saw through her. When you need, my dear, is a husband. What you need, my dear, is a husband. What do you want? She asked. I want to have a talk with your doggy. The girl was stupid. I could see from the start how stupid she was. At the moment that mutt ran in yapping furiously, and I was trying to grab her, the repulsive creature almost caught my nose between her teeth. But then I saw her basket in the corner, which was just what I was looking for. I went over to it, felt under the straw, and to my great joy, I found a small bundle of papers. Seeing what I was doing, the nasty little cur first took a bite out of my calf. And then, when, upon further sniffing around that I had taken her letters, she began whining and making up to me. And I told her, oh, no, my dear, I'll see you later. And off I went. I believe the girl mistook me for a madman. She seemed very frightened indeed. Once home, I wanted to get down to work immediately to have those letters sorted before dark, since I can't see too well by candlelight. But for some reason, Marva decided to scrub the floor just then. Those stupid Finns, they'd always succumb to their obsession for cleanliness at the worst moments. So I went out for a walk to think it all over. Now, finally, I'll find everything out about these intrigues and plots. I'll understand all the little wheels and springs, and to get to the bottom of the matter, and these letters will explain. Dogs are a very clever race. They know all about the intrigue, and so it's all bound to be in these letters. All there is to know about the director's character, actions, and she too is sure to be mentioned. But never mind that. Silence! I came home toward evening. Most of the time, I lay in my bed. November 13th. Let's see now. This letter looks quite legible, though there's something canine about the handwriting. Dear Fidel, I find it difficult to get accustomed to the commonness of your name. Couldn't they find a better one for you, Fidel? Like Rose? It's very ordinary, but all that's besides the point. I'm glad that we have decided to write to each other. The spelling is very good. It's even punctuated correctly. This is considerably better than our divisional chief can do, although he claims they have some sort of university or other. Let's go on. I believe that sharing feelings and impressions with another is one of the main blessings of life. That thought's stolen from a work translated from the German. The author's name escapes me now. I speak from experience, although I've never been much further than the gates of our house. But then, isn't my life full of blessings, my young mistress, whom her papa calls Sophie? She's crazy about me. Oh, never mind. Silence! Papa often pets me too. I drink tea, coffee with cream. I must tell you, my dear, that I am not in the least tempted by the half-gnawed bones which our Fido chews on in the kitchen. I only like the bones of the game, and even then only if the marrow hasn't been sucked out by someone else. A mixture of sauces is nice, as long as they contain no capers or vegetables. What I hate is people who give dogs the little pellets that they need out of bread. Some people are sitting at the table who've previously touched all sorts of filthy things, and they begin to knead a piece of bread with those same hands, and then calls you and thrusts the pellet into your mouth. It's awkward somehow to refuse, and disgusted, you eat it up. What's this all about? What rubbish! As though there weren't more interesting things to write about. Let's see. Next page. There may be something less stupid here. Now I'm going to tell you with pleasure what goes on in this household. I have mentioned the main character whom Sophie calls Papa. He's a very strange man. At last, I knew that they had shrewd judgment. Whatever the subject, let's see what Papa's like. He's a very strange man. He's usually silent. He speaks very little. But a week ago, he never stopped saying to himself, will I get it or not? Once he even asked me, what do you say, Maggie? Will I get it or won't I? I could sense out of it, so I couldn't make no sense out of it, so I smelled his shoe and I left the room. And then a week later, Papa came home overjoyed. All that morning, formally dressed people came and congratulated him. At dinner, Papa was gayer than I've ever seen him before. And after dinner, he picked me up and he held me level with his chest and he said, look, Maggie, what's this? I saw some sort of ribbon. I sniffed at it, but it had no fragrance whatever. Finally, discreetly, I gave it a lick. Slightly salty. The mud really goes too far. She needs a good whipping. Is he that vain, is he? I must take that into account. Goodbye, my dear. I must run along. Blah, 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 blah. We'll finish this letter tomorrow. Hello, I'm back with you. Today, my mistress, Sophie. Aha. Let's see what she says about Sophie. I really am a rogue, but never mind. Let's go on. My mistress, Sophie, was in a terrific to-do. She was getting ready for a ball, and I intended to take advantage of her absence and write to you. Sophie is always very happy when she's about to leave for a ball, but it's always very irritable while she's getting dressed for it. You know, my dear, I personally can see no pleasure in going to a ball. Sophie usually returns home from balls at 6 a.m., and I can tell by her pale and emancipated features that the poor thing hasn't been given a bite to eat. I confess I could never lead such a life. If I had to go without game in a sauce or a chicken wing stew, I don't know what I would become of me. A sauce is not as bad with porridge. But nothing can make carrots, turnips, and artichokes palatable. The style is very jerky. You can see that it's not written by a man. She starts off all right, but then she lapses into dogginess. Let's see another letter. This looks rather long. There's no date. Oh, my dear, how strongly I feel the approach of spring. My heart beats as though it were waiting for something. In my ears, there's a constant buzz. Very often, I listen so intently behind doors that I raise my front paw. And confidentially, I have plenty of suitors. I often sit by the window and I watch them. If only you could see some of them. They're so ugly. There's a horrible mongrel, that's stupidity written all over his face, who swaggers down the street and imagines he's a person of breeding, and that everyone is bound to admire him. I pay no attention to him, as though I hadn't ever even noticed him. And then you should have seen the terrifying Great Dane that stopped in front of my window. If that one stood up on his hind legs, which incidentally the clod is incapable of doing, he would be a head taller than Sophie's papa, who's quite tall himself and fat besides. Moreover, the lump seems to be very arrogant. I growled at him, but it didn't put him off in the least. He just hung around, his tongue out, drooped over his ears, and kept staring at my window, the oaf. But my dear, you don't really imagine, do you, that my heart is indifferent to all the hopefuls? You should have seen the dashing young lover that came jumping over the fence into our courtyard. His name is Treasure, and he has such a nice face. Damn it! What rubbish! How much of her letters is going to be filled with this stupid stuff? I'm after people, not dogs. I need spiritual food, and I'm served these inanities. Let's skip a page, and perhaps we'll find something more interesting. Sophie was sitting at the table sewing something. I was looking out the window. I like to watch people in the street, and suddenly the manservant came in and announced someone. Show him in, Sophie said. And she hugged me hard, and she murmured, oh, Maggie, darling, if you only knew who that is. He's the guards officer. His hair is black, and his eyes are so dark and so light at the same time, like fire. Sophie rushed out. A minute later, a young officer with black side whiskers appeared. He went to the mirror, smoothed his hair, and then he looked around the room. I growled a little, and I settled down by the window. And soon Sophie came back and greeted him gaily, while I pretended to be busy looking out of the window. But in fact, I turned my head sideways a little bit so that I could catch what was said. You can't imagine, Fidel, dear, the silliness of that conversation. They spoke about some lady who, during a dance, kept doing a certain step instead of the one that was expected to do, and then about somebody called Bobov, who looked like a stork and almost fell over, and then one about Lindia, who thought that she had blue eyes when in fact they were really green, and so on and on and on. And oh no, I said to myself, this officer doesn't compare to Treasure. Heavens, what a difference. To start with, the officer has a wide face, quite bald except for his side whiskers, which in fact look like a black kerchief tied around, whereas Treasure's face is narrow and fine, and he has a sweet white patch on his brow. Treasure's waist is incomparably slenderer than the officer's, and his eyes, his gestures, and his ways are vastly superior, really. A tremendous difference. I wonder what she finds in her officer. What on earth can she admire in him? Yes, here I tend to agree. Something seems wrong. It is quite unbelievable that this officer should have swept her off her feet. Let's see. If she likes the officer, I think she'll soon be liking the civil service clerk who sits at Papa's study. That one, my dear, is a real scarecrow. He looks a bit like a turtle caught in a bag. Which clerk can that be? He's got a funny name, too, and he's always sitting sharpening quills. His hair on his head is like straw. Papa sends him on errands like a servant. That filthy cur. She's trying to get its own back. Why is my hair like straw? Sophie can hardly control her laughter when she sees him. You wretched lying dog! What a filthy, poisonous tongue. As if I didn't know it's all your jealousy. I know whose tricks these are. I recognize the hand of the divisional chief. For some reason, that man has sworn undying hatred for me. And he's trying to harm me every minute of the day and night still. Let's see one more letter. It may make it clear. My dear Fidel, forgive me for not writing to you all this time. I've been going around in absolute ecstasy. I agree without reservation with the philosopher who said that a love is a second life. Moreover, a lot of things are changing in our household. The officer comes every day now, and Sophie is madly in love with him. Papa is very gay. I even heard our Gregory, who always talks to himself while sweeping the floors, say that the wedding is close at hand, because Papa always wanted to see Sophie married to a high official or to an army officer with a brilliant career ahead of him. Ha! I can't go on. High officials, senior officers, they all get the best things in the world. You know, you discover a crumb of happiness. You reach out for it, and then along comes a high official or an officer, and he snatches it away. God damn it. I would like so much to become a high official myself, and not just to obtain her hand in marriage either. No, I'd like to be a high official just so that I could watch them jump around for my benefit. I'd listen for a while to their courtly jokes and innuendos, and then I would tell them what they could do with themselves. It hurts, though. Oh, hell. I tore the stupid little dog's letter to shreds. December 3rd. Impossible! Lies! There can't be a wedding. So what if he has a commission in the Guards? That's nothing but a position. You can't touch it with your hand. A Guards officer doesn't have a third eye in the middle of his forehead, and his nose isn't made of gold. But it's the same stuff as mine or anyone else's, and he uses it to sniff, not to eat, for sneezing, not for coughing. I've often tried to discover where all these differences lie. Why am I a clerk? Why should I be a clerk? Maybe I'm really a general or a count, and I only seem to be a clerk. Maybe I don't really know who I am. There are plenty of instances in history when somebody quite ordinary, and not necessarily an aristocrat, some middle-class person or even a peasant, suddenly turns out to be a public figure, and perhaps even the ruler of a country. And if a peasant can turn into someone so important, where are the limits for the possibilities of a man of breeding? Imagine, for instance, me entering a room in a general's uniform. There's an epaulette on my right shoulder, an epaulette on my left, a blue ribbon across my chest. How would that be? Huh? What tune would my beauties sing then? And Papa himself, what tune? What would he say? Ah, he's so vain. He's a Mason. There's no mistake about it, although he may pretend to be this or that. I noticed from the start that when he shakes hands, he sticks out 2 fingers only. But I can't be promoted to a general or a governor or anything like that overnight. What I'd like to know is, why am I a clerk? Why precisely a clerk? December 5th. I read the newspapers all morning. Strange things are happening in Spain. I can't even make them out properly. They write that the throne has been vacated and that the ranking grandees are having difficulty in selecting an heir. It seems there's discontent. It sounds very strange to me. How can the throne be vacant? They say that some Donna may accede. A Donna cannot accede to the throne. It's absolutely impossible that a king should sit on the throne. But to say that there's no king, well, that's impossible. There's got to be a king. There should be a king. There must be a king. But he's hidden away somewhere in anonymity. It's even possible that he's around, but is being forced to remain in hiding for family reasons or for fear of some neighboring country, such as France. Or there may be other reasons. December 8th. I was on the point of going to the office, but various considerations held me back. I couldn't get those Spanish affairs out of my head. How can a Donna possibly become ruler? They won't allow it. In the first place, England won't stand for it. And then we must keep in mind the political setup of the rest of Europe, the Austrian emperor, our czar. I confess, I was so perturbed and hurt by these events. I could do nothing all day. Marva remarked that I was very absent-minded during dinner. In fact, I believe I absent-mindedly threw a couple of plates on the floor, where they broke at once. After dinner, I walked the streets, uphill, downhill, came across nothing of interest. And then mostly I lay in my bed and I thought about the Spanish question. The year 2000, April 43. This is a day of great jubilation. Spain has a king. They found him. I am the king. I discovered it today, and it all came to me in a flash. It's incredible to me now that I could have imagined that I was just a civil service clerk. How could such a crazy idea ever have entered my head? Thank God no one thought of slapping me into a lunatic asylum. And now I can see everything clearly as if it lay in the palm of my hand. But what was happening to me before? Then things loomed at me out of a fog, and now I believe that all the trouble stems from the misconception that human brains are located in the head. They're not. Human brains are blown in by the winds from somewhere around the Caspian Sea. Marva was the first to whom I revealed my identity, and when she heard that she was facing the King of Spain, she flung up her hands in awe. She almost died of terror. The silly woman had never seen a King of Spain before. However, I tried to calm her down, and speaking graciously, I did my best to assure her of my royal favor. I was not going to hold against her all the times that she had failed to shine my boots properly. The masses are so ignorant. One can't talk to them on lofty subjects. Perhaps she was so frightened because she thought that all kings of Spain are like Philip II. But I carefully pointed out to her that I wasn't like Philip II at all. I didn't go into the office. To hell with that. No, my friends, you won't entice me there now. Never again shall I copy your dreadful documents. Marchober 86, between night and day. Today, our divisional chief sent someone around to make me go into the office. I hadn't been there for over 3 weeks. So I went just for a lark. The divisional chief expected me to come apologizing to him, but I just looked at him indifferently, with not too much ire, nor too much benevolence either. And then I sat down at my usual place as though unaware of the people around me. I look around at all the scribbling rabble and I thought, if only you had an inkling of who's sitting here among you. Oh, Lord, what a fuss you would make. They'd be terrific to do, and the divisional chief himself would bow deeply in front of me, which I suppose to abstract some papers from which I could suppose to abstract something or another. But I didn't stir. A few minutes later, there was a general commotion. They said that the director was on his way. Several clerks jumped up, hoping that he would notice them. I didn't budge. And when word came that the director was about to pass through our division, they all buttoned up their coats. Well, I did nothing of the sort. What kind of director does he think he is? And who says that I should get up for him? Never. He's an old cork, not a director. Yeah, just an ordinary cork. The kind that you use for stopping a bottle. That's all he is. But the funniest thing of all was when they gave me a paper to sign. They expected that I would sign it in the corner, head clerk, such and such. Let them think again. I wrote in the main space, the one reserved for the director's signature, Ferdinand VIII. You should have witnessed the awed silence that followed. But I merely waved my hand graciously and said, dispense with the manifestations of allegiance. And I walked out of the room. And from there I went straight to the director's house. But he was not at home. The footman tried to stop me from going in, but what I said to him made his arms drop limp at his side. And I went straight to her boudoir. She was sitting in front of her mirror. She jumped up and stepped back away from me. Still, I didn't tell her that I was the King of Spain. I simply told her that she couldn't ever even imagine the happiness awaiting for her, and that despite our enemies' intrigues, we would be together. I didn't want to say more, and I left. Women, they could be such perfidious things. Only now did I understand what a woman is like. So far, no one has found out whom woman is in love with. I was the first to discover it. Woman is in love with the devil. And I'm not joking either. Physicists write a lot of drivel about her being this, that, the other, but she only loves the devil. Look, do you see over there in front of the tier, right? From the tier of boxes, she raises her lingerie. You think that she's looking at that fat man with the star over there? Nah, nothing of the sort. She's staring at the devil. The devil hiding behind the fat man's back. You see how he has hidden himself in the star and he's beckoning to her with his finger? Come. She's going to marry him too, and she will for sure. As with all the rest of them, all those who lick boots and proclaim that they're patriotism and all they really want is annuities and more annuities, some patriots. They'd sell their mother and their father and their God for money, the strutting betrayers of Christ. And all this crazy ambition and vanity come from the little bubble under the tongue, which has a tiny worm about the size of a pinhead in it. And it's all the work of a barber on P Street. I can't recall his name, but the moving force behind it is all from the Sultan of Turkey, who pays the barber to spread Mohammedanism all over the world. They say that in France already the majority of people have embraced the Mohammedan faith. No date, a day without a date. Went along Nevsky Avenue incognito. I saw the Tsar riding past, and everybody was doffing his hat, and so did I. I gave no sign that I was the King of Spain. I thought it would be undignified to reveal my identity there in front of all those people, and that it would be more proper to be presented at court first. What has prevented me so far is the fact that I haven't got Spanish royal attire. If only I could get a hold of a royal mantle of some sort. I thought of having one made, but tailors are so stupid. Besides, they don't seem to be interested in their trade nowadays, and they go in for speculation, so that most of the time they end up mending roads. I decided to make a mantle out of my best coat, which I had worn only twice. But I didn't want those good-for-nothings to mess it up, so I preferred to do it myself. I locked my doors, and I didn't want to be seen. I had to cut my coat to ribbons with the scissors, since a mantle has to be completely different style. Can't remember the day, nor was there a month. Damned if I know what's been going on. The mantle is ready, and Marvin really let out a yell when I put it on. Even so, I still didn't feel ready to be presented at court. My retinue hasn't arrived from Spain yet. The absence of a retinue would be incompatible with my dignity. I am expecting them at any time. First date. I am puzzled by an unaccountable delay in the arrival of my retinue. What could be holding them up? I went to the post office and inquired whether the Spanish delegates had arrived. The postmaster is an utter fool. He knows nothing. No, he says, there are no Spanish delegates around here, but if you wish to mail a letter, we'll accept it. What the hell is he talking about? What letter? Letter my foot. Let the druggist write letters. Madrid, Februarius the 13th. So, I'm in Spain. It all happened so quickly, I hardly had time to realize it. This morning, the Spanish delegation finally arrived for me, and we all got into a carriage. And I was somewhat bewildered by the extraordinary speed at which we traveled. We went so fast that in a half an hour, we reached the Spanish border. But then nowadays, there are railroads all over Europe, and the ships go so fast, too. Spain is a strange country. And when we entered, the first room I saw was a multitude of people with shaven heads. I soon realized, though, that this must be the Dominican or Capuchin monks, because they always shave their heads. I also thought that the manners of the king's chancellor, he was the one leading me by the hand, they were rather strange. He pushed me into a small room and he said, "You sit quiet and don't you call yourself King Ferdinand again, or I'm going to beat the nonsense out of your head." I knew that I was just being tested. So I refused to submit. And for this, the chancellor hit me across the back with a stick twice, so painfully that I almost let out a cry, but I contained myself, remembering that it's customary procedure among knights of initiation into an exalted order. To this day, they adhere to the chivalric code in Spain. So I left to myself, I decided to devote some time to the affairs of state. I've discovered that China and Spain are the same thing, and it's only ignorance that makes people take them for two separate countries. I advise anybody who doubts it to take a piece of paper and write the word Spain, and they'll see for themselves that it comes out China. I also gave much thought to the sad event that must occur tomorrow at 7 o'clock, for as foreseen by the famous English chemist Wellington, the Earth will mount the moon. I confess I was deeply worried when I thought of the moon's extraordinary sensitivity and fragility. The moon, of course, is made in Hamburg, and I must say they do a very poor job. I wonder why England doesn't do something about that. It's a lame Cooper that makes the moon, and it's quite obvious that the fool has no conception of what the moon should be. He uses tarred rope and olive oil, and that's why the stench is so awful all over the earth, and why we're forced to plug up our noses. And that's why the moon itself is such a delicate ball that men cannot live there, only noses. And that's why we can't see our own noses, because they're all up on the moon. And when I thought what a heavy thing the earth is, and that sitting down on the moon, it would crush our noses into powder, I became so worried that I put my socks and my shoes on and I rushed to the state council room and ordered the police force to stand by and prevent the earth from mounting the moon. The Capuchin monks I found in the state council room were very clever people. And when I said, "Gentlemen, let's save the moon. The earth is preparing to mount it," they all rushed at once to execute my royal wish. And many of them started to climb the wall and reach the moon. But at that moment, the Grand Chancellor came in. And as soon as they saw him, they scattered. Being the king, I remained alone. But to my surprise, the chancellor hit me with his stick and he chased me into my room. Such is the power of popular tradition in Spain. January, the same year, which happened after Februarius. I still can't make out what sort of place Spain is. The customs and etiquette at the court are quite incredible. I don't see and I don't grasp it. I don't understand it. Today, they shaved my head, although I shouted with all my might that I did not want to become a monk. And then they began to drip cold water on my head, and everything went blank. Never have I been through such hell. I can't understand the point of this peculiar custom. So stupid, so senseless. And the irresponsibility of the kings who never got around to outlawing this custom is beyond me. Some indications make me wonder whether I haven't fallen into the hands of the Inquisition. Maybe the man that I took for the chancellor is really the Grand Inquisitor himself. But then I can't see how the king can be subjected to the Inquisition. Well, true, this could be the work of France, especially Polignac. That Polignac is an absolute beast. He has sworn to drive me to my death. And so he maneuvers on and on and on. And I know that, my fine fellow, that you in turn are being led by the English. The English are great politicians. They sow the seeds of dissension everywhere. And the whole world knows that when English takes snuff, France sneezes. 25th date. Today, the Grand Inquisitor entered my room. I heard his steps approaching while he was still far off, so I hid under a chair. He looked around, and not seeing me, he began to call out. First he shouted my name and civil service rank. I remained silent. And then, Ferdinand VIII, King of Spain. I was about to stick my head up, and then I thought to myself, no, they won't get me that way. They'll want to pour cold water on my head again. But then he saw me, and he chased me out from under the chair with his stick. His damn stick hurts dreadfully. But my very latest discovery made me feel better. I had found out that every rooster has his own Spain, and that he has it under his feathers. The Grand Inquisitor left very angry, threatening me with some punishment or the other. Of course, I completely ignored his helpless fury. I knew he was a puppet, a tool of England. The 34-month year, Robert 349. No, I have no strength left. I can't stand anymore. My God, what are they doing to me? They pour cold water on my head. They don't listen to me. They don't hear me. They don't see me. What have I done to them? Why do they torture me so? What do they want from me? What can I give them? I haven't anything to give. I have no strength. I cannot bear this suffering. My head is on fire. And everything goes around me in circles. Save me. Take me away from here. Give me a carriage with horses, swift as the wind, and drive on. Coachman, let the harness bells ring. Soar upward, my horses. Carry me away from this world. Further, further, where I will see nothing, nothing. There is the sky smoking before me. A star twinkles far away. The forest rushes past with its dark trees and crescent moon. The violent fog is a carpet underfoot, and I hear the twanging of a guitar string through the fog. On one side is the sea, and on the other is Italy. And then Russian huts come into sight. Perhaps that's my house over there, looking blue in the distance. And isn't that my mother sitting by the window? Mother, save your wretched son. Let your tears fall on his sick head. See how they torture him. Hold me, a poor waif, in your arms. There's no room for him in this world. They're chasing him. Mother, take pity on your sick child. And by the way, have you heard that the Dey of Algiers has a wart on his right nose? Right under his nose? Thank you for reading. Thank you for visiting. This is Jimmy. You've been reading with Jimmy. This was Nikolai Gogol's Diary of a Madman. Hope you watch our analysis of this absolutely wonderful story. Thanks again.